Hey, hi everyone. Good morning, good evening. I'm Rohit. Uh, I have around 12 years of experience in information security, and I have handled multiple roles as part of my career. And I can say that I have a 360-degree knowledge of information security and overall experience with respect to how to handle security in the organizations. Okay, so now let's start with the topic information security risk management in IT industry. So you may ask me what exactly is information security, what exactly is risk management, and why specific to IT industry. So let's answer all these questions in the upcoming slides. Okay. And if you have any doubts in the overall slides or anything, what I'll do is I'll take a 5 minutes pause for each slide and check the chat. Do post your question in the chat. I'll try to answer to all the questions either in the slide itself or at the end of the session. Okay, so let's go ahead. Now, what is what is an asset? Why information security is so important in the organizations? Okay, so we all know the definition and the answer for the word asset, right? So asset is anything valuable to a company or to individual or to a country, right? So asset is anything which is valuable. Now, why information asset? Why information is called as an asset? So in every organization, asset information is a crucial asset. Okay, the reason being, if the information is lost, there'll be many critical challenges and there will be many operational issues for the organization on day-to-day basis. Okay. Now, and if the information is lost, it can be misused by third parties, it can be misused by hackers, it can be misused by its competitors, and it's gonna completely spoil the whole business of the organization. That is the reason information is considered as an asset in the organizations. Now, what kind of information are we talking about? Okay, so information can be in any form. Okay, information can be your software, information can be your hardware, information can be the actual data that we are referring to. So information can be in multiple forms, right? And since information is in the software, hardware, and data, we consider these components are also assets. Okay, so now, for example, what kind of information might fall under software? Let's consider a company, an organization is coming up with a software product, maybe a mobile app or maybe a web app. Okay, and since that particular application is open to internet, and many people will access the particular application as part of the day-to-day operations, it's going to store multiple information. For example, it can store it can store users login details. For example, everybody logged into this particular Zoom invite. While joining the Zoom invite, you have shared your name, your mail ID, and your mobile number. So Zoom organization is supposed to consider that as a crucial information, and it is supposed to store that information and ensure that is not compromised by any hacker. So your software is critical because it is storing certain information. Okay, hardware. What kind of hardware? Let's assume your laptop. Let's assume your server. Let's assume your network device. So every hardware contains some kind of information being stored. Okay, it can be in a digital form, it can be, it can be encrypted form, it can be in any other form, and it is storing certain information. It can be operational data, it can be configurations of the device, it can be anything. If that information is leaked outside, it is going to create some impact to organization, and that is the reason even hardware is considered as also as an asset. Okay, so see, the problem with hardware is when you buy a mobile phone. Okay, today let's assume you're buying a mobile phone, let's say for $200 or $300. Okay, over a period of time, in 1 year or 2 years, the value of the asset is going to degrade Today you bought it for $200. Maybe tomorrow when you want to resell the mobile phone, you're gonna sell it only for $100 because it is a depreciating asset. But in the organizations, when you have a laptop and you started using the laptop in the last 2 years, and you have stored multiple information, it can be source code, it can be your emails, it can be your documents, it can be your presentations, it can be anything. And also it can be your your prototype information, it can be your database server, it can be any information being stored as part of the hardware. Okay, so there's multiple information being stored over a period of time. Though the value of the asset is degrading, since you're adding more and more information to the laptop, the value of the laptop is more crucial. The data in the laptop is more crucial to the organization than the actual value of the asset. Okay, so like I said now, and for example, when I talk about data, it can be in any form. It can be your email, it can be your it can be your database server, the data in the database server, it can be even a paper document, it can be any kind of, it can be in any form. Okay, so all these are assets to IT organizations. Okay, and these assets are very crucial, and if these assets are in a wrong hand, or if they're out of the organization, or if they are compromised by any hacker, it's going to create a lot of impact to organization on day-to-day operations. Okay, now let's talk about what kind of information is important to organizations. Okay, these are some of the important things. One is the customer data. See, I'm talking about IT industry, right? When I talk about IT industry, consider any famously known, applications like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, okay, any other websites that we usually use. See, when we talk about Facebook, we register our details when we log in for the first time. When we sign up in Facebook account, we're gonna add our name, we're gonna add our address, we're gonna add our location, we're gonna add our username, password, mm, okay, and you know what all this is something that we're going to share as part of our user registration. And and once we logged into Facebook for the first time, we start sharing our profile. I mean, we start sharing our photos, we're going to start sharing our videos, we're going to start sharing our likes, dislikes, movies, we're going to meet new friends in Facebook, we're going to chat with them, we're going to share a lot of information with them. So all that is called customer data. And it is the responsibility of the organization, irrespective of where you are, it's irrespective of what your status is, whether you're a normal citizen, whether you're a government employee, or whether it is, you're a president of a country, it doesn't matter. At any point of time, it is supposed to consider each and every individual's profile, personal data as critical asset, and it has to implement certain controls to ensure the complete information is properly secured in the organization. Okay, so that's customer data. Second thing is financial information. Since we in organization, we handle multiple things with respect to our bank account, our credit card numbers, and our investments, our pay slips, our transactions, our shareholder values, our stock price, everything. So if there's anything related to financial information, quarterly performance reports, or any other reports, okay, all these information is anything financial is supposed to be within the organization. See, for example, whether a company is doing good or doing bad is completely determined by the financial reports. Okay, maybe company is boasting so much in the public that they're doing good, but but actual quarterly performance is very bad, or quarterly performance is good, and unnecessarily you should not share the information outside. So even financial information is very critical to store, to secure the data within the organization. Now let's talk about intellectual property. See, IT companies, they have to come up with new products all the time to encourage more and more people using those products, more and more see, they can be developing softwares for individual citizens. They can be developing softwares for organizations for day-to-day uses. They can be developing softwares, let's say, for automation, like any AI tools. They can be developing multiple things, right? Yeah, let's assume autonomous cars. Tesla is coming up with multiple autonomous driving softwares, right? So any source code, any prototype, any software which is being developed, okay, all those are intellectual properties, and they are to be secured within the organization. And if it is in wrong hands, let's assume we have a new we are let's assume the organization is coming up with a new tool which is not there in the market so far, and over a period of time you want to so you are developing the product and you are ready with a demo and you want to showcase it to the world. Before you showcase it to the world, it's your source code is completely compromised by a hacker, and that source code is given to different your competitor, and competitor came up with a new tool using this source code before you. They have released a product before you, so that's going to be a huge business loss to organizations, right? So all these trade secrets, copyrighted products, intellectual properties, source codes have to be secured within the organization. And apart from that, every organization also has employees, and employees also work on multiple things. When a new person is being considered as an employee, we have to share our personal details, username, password, email IDs. We have to share our bank details. We have to share our SSN numbers. All these things which are personal to the individual, even those also are being shared to organizations. So along with customer data, financial information, and intellectual property, we also have to consider the employees' data also as a confidential information. Okay. Okay. Let me check if there are any questions. Okay, I don't see any questions. Okay, good. If you have any questions and if you feel like you're gonna forget, don't hesitate to put in the chat so that we can discuss after at the end of the session or in the same time. Okay, so now I assume everybody is clear about what exactly is information asset in the organizations, and why is it very crucial. Okay, so any data, data can be in multiple forms, and mostly it will be in digital form, but it can be email, it can be image, it can be it can be a chat message, it can be a Word document, it can be a PDF file, it can be doc file, it can be anything. So you always have to ensure what is confidential, what is important to organization, and how do we ensure that particular information is not being compromised by any third party hackers. Okay, it can be third party, it can be internal hackers, it can be external hackers. Okay, um, okay, and it can be anything. Okay, so at the end of the day, what you need to do is as a information security professional, or when you get into your when you get when you're if you're working as information security professional, and you if you are to as if you want to join information security career, when you start your careers or when you are in information security careers, ensure you have proper security controls implemented to ensure the data. It's always about information. It's always about information. Okay, information should not be in the wrong hands. It should be always within the control of the organization. Okay. Okay, I'll move on now. Okay, let me start with some basics. I know there'll be multiple people joining this boot camp, and everybody have a different understanding. So I have some basic definitions also covered. So let's understand what is risk, and what is uncertainty. Okay, so risk is any probability. Risk is always there's always risk is identifying the probability of negative outcoming. Okay, you definitely know that 50% that it's gonna rain today, right? See, you when we go outside our house, when we walk out of our house, and you look at the clouds and you see definitely it's gonna rain. You see the clouds, you say 90% it's going to rain, 80% it's going to rain, or 10 or 50% it's going to rain. And then you start looking at the weather apps, and weather apps will tell you it's partly cloud today, it's going to shower heavy rains today and all that, right? So you have a probability to identify that something is going to happen. So that is called risk. You can definitely identify, see, based on certain parameters, based on certain indicators, based on certain statistics, you can definitely say there's something gonna happen, and the impact can be anything. Impact can be good, impact can be bad, impact can be worse, but it's gonna happen, and you have a probability. That is called risk. And with risk, it's always negative outcome. It's never a positive outcome. So positive outcome is always good, but with risk, when we say risk, we always associate risk with negative outcome. Okay. Now let's talk about uncertainty. Okay. When we say uncertainty, we have no idea whether there's gonna something happening. All of a sudden there is a disaster. All of a sudden, see, you walk out of your house and you see there's no cloud, there's no signs of any clouds or anything. You start walking in the street and all of a sudden it start raining, you're completely drenched. So that is uncertainty. You don't have any statistics, you don't have any way to showcase that it's gonna pour down heavily today. And since you are not aware of it, you're not prepared, you're not carrying your umbrella, you're not prepared, and that's the reason you're completely drenched in the rain. So uncertainty is something you have no idea that's going to happen. And since you have no idea, you're not ready to face those outcomes. Okay. Now, why do we have to talk about risk and uncertainty? The point is, when you know that there is definitely a 90% chance that somebody is gonna attack somebody is gonna, some hacker is gonna hack your application. 90% chances, 80% chances, okay, or 75% chance that your application is going to get compromised, or the organization is going to compromised, because it's easy for hackers to hack the network, or hack the application, or hack your servers, or hack your endpoints like laptops. So when you know that there is a probability that your assets are being compromised, you start looking at you start looking at what kind of controls we need to implement. Okay, so you start looking at whether the risk is 90% or 80% or 20%. See, if it is 20%, and it's a low probability for you, because it's like once in 2 times once in a year. Okay. uh, Okay. So you're gonna start looking at a risk based on the probability, and then you start looking at whether the risk is to the data, whether the risk is to the hardware, whether the risk is to the software, or whether the risk is to the network, or whether the risk is to the overall organization. Then you start looking at implementing certain controls so that you can avoid that risk. For example, if you know that for sure 90% chances that it's gonna rain, you start taking much certain measures, right? You might carry your umbrella, or you might carry your raincoat, or you might not go in the on the bike today. You might take the car so that you don't get drenched. Or yeah, if for sure, maybe you can work from home also, since it's definitely gonna rain, you want to avoid going out, so that you start working from home. So you're taking certain measures so that you are not completely getting drenched. Okay, so this risk, the probability of risk helps in organizing your activities, prioritizing your activities, coming up with a plan of action to ensure the risk will not have an impact to organization. Okay. Now, so risk will always talk about metrics, will always talk about impact, will always talk about probability, and you always quantify it. Okay. Sometimes it is quantifiable, sometimes it is not quantifiable. Now I'm gonna cover that in the next sessions. But with risk helps you in making decisions. What is your immediate priority? What are the immediate controls you need to implement? What are the controls that you can implement in the next 6 months? What are the controls you can implement in the next 1 year, so that the probability of your data being compromised is gonna reduce. See, any control we implement, any decision making, anything, it's always about implementing controls at the data level. Okay. Okay. Let me see if there are any doubts, and then we'll move on. Okay, how can you differentiate data and information? Okay, so I see there's a question, and there's an answer also. Data is a collection of facts, mostly in their raw form, while information is organized. See, we cannot say data and information. See, everything is uh, data. Everything is information. But what is important? See, there'll be a lot of, see, when you say data, it's multiple things. Okay, it can be whatever we are talking right now is also data. It's an audio form. Okay, whatever we are preparing in the documents, it is also data. But mostly information is something which is part of a data. Okay, which is properly organized and which is valuable. Okay, which is valuable to organization. That is very important. Not every data is information. There'll be multiple junk information. There'll be multiple junk everything. So information is something which is critical or which is important to organization. Okay. Now, okay. Now let's talk about different types of risk. Okay. So when I talk about risk, so I'm sorry. Is there a question? Okay. So when I talk about risks, there are multiple risks involved. I mean, the outcome one is, see, when I told you about risk, right? Risk is always about negative outcome. Now, when we are impacted, there'll be multiple outcomes of risk. First one is a financial risk. Let's assume. I'm not sure how many of you have seen this news recently. WannaCry, ransomware attacks, and all that is ransomware attacks, malware attacks, data leakage. I mean, you guys must be seeing multiple news about multiple hacks happening across organizations, right? So one such is a financial risk. One such, for example, let's consider ransomware. So ransomware is an attack happening on most of the organization, wherein what it does is it's gonna encrypt the whole data in your laptop, not just one laptop, but let's assume organization has 100 laptops or 200 laptops or 1,000 desktops or 2,000 laptops. So it's gonna compromise, it's gonna encrypt all the laptops or all the desktops data, and it asks you for money. So the hackers will ask you for money to decrypt the data. So you are paying money, you are losing money. So that's a financial risk because you did not implement proper controls. You are losing money because there was a ransomware attack, and that's a financial impact. So those kind of risks are called financial risks. Not just this example. Let's assume you are doing. Let's assume Amazon website. See, Amazon website is all about making transactions, making purchases, taking products from the vendors, giving that deliveries to citizens or the customers, right? So let's assume Amazon website is down for half an hour. Okay, if the Amazon website is down for half an hour, there's going to be a huge loss to the Amazon site. Let's assume there's some festival sale happening, some Christmas sale happening, and everybody is on the Amazon website to buy some or the other products as part of the discounts, right? So if the website is down for half an hour, it's a huge loss to the organization. So those types of risks are called financial risk because there was an attack because there was an attack on the organization. The organization is losing a lot of money as an impact. So those are called financial risks. Okay. Second one is operational risk. Okay. Let's assume mm, Okay, let's assume we have created softwares for producing cars. Let's assume we have automation, we have robots involved, we have complete manufacturing site is automated, and your software is part of that particular automation of manufacturing cars. And as part of the manufacturing cars, okay, the company is supposed to produce, let's say, 1,000 cars on a single day. Okay, and now because of some error, because of some malfunction, or because of some software is getting compromised, or some hacker is in your system and they stop the complete manufacturing operations, the complete manufacturing cycle. I mean, it's a huge cycle, right? Manufacturing of a car, you have to source the products for raw materials from the vendors. You start making them into car body shapes, and you have to start assembling them. The entire what do you call, entire belt is automated, and everything is sourced, everything is inventorized. So if the manufacturing software is down, company has a target to produce 1,000 cars a day because it has to meet the demand. And since it is down, they're not producing any cars. They don't have inventory, and they don't have an idea of inventory. They can't do the production manually, and the entire operation is at a loss, right? So I mean, at the end of the day, you're gonna definitely have a financial impact because you're not selling cars, because you're not producing cars. But the main impact is to the operations. Okay, because of some errors, because of some hacker compromising the application, whatever it is, your entire operation is at a risk. So that is called operational risk. The impact is to the operations. I mean, finally, there will be an impact. At the end of the day, you're going to definitely see a financial loss. But the first thing that you see is operational impact because you're not in a position to produce 1,000 cars a day or even a single car a day. Okay. Third one is strategic risk. Okay, so let's take an example. Let's take an example of the prototype intellectual property. I was telling about intellectual property previously, right? So intellectual property is all about new product or prototype, R&D data, or you're coming up with a new software which is no longer in the market. You're coming with a mobile app. You're coming with, let's say, some AI tool like ChatGPT or anything. So you in the organization, your entire team is working on a prototype, and you want to showcase to the world that it's going to change the complete market. It's going to change the trend. It's going to change everything because this no, is not there's nothing like this product so far in the market. But you're working on it. All of a sudden, somebody in the team has copied the complete source code in a pen drive, and given that to uh, some rivals, okay, your competitor. And competitor came up with that product before you in the market, and he is making more, he is making revenue, he is making benefits out of it, he is generating more and more revenue, and because he has this complete source code with him. And now, since the complete strategy is changed, now you're supposed to come up with a product, you're supposed to make revenue out of it, but now you don't have any product to launch. Your entire strategy is going to change to come up with a better product than what is available in the market. You already have a first version. Now you'll have to come up with a second version. Instead of releasing the product, you have to come up with a second version which is better than the original tool, right? So your entire strategy is changing because there was somebody who copied the complete source code into a pen drive and they gave it to the competitors, and now the competitor is already having a product and is making revenue. So your strategy is not to launch the product. Now the strategy is to come up with a new product which is better than your competitor. So your complete strategy is changed now, and this is called a strategy risk. Whatever you're doing right now, you have to make changes to what you're doing now to come up with a better strategy so that you are competing in the market. Okay, that is called strategic risk. Now, let's talk about compliance risk. This is very important. I mean, financial risk, operational risk, strategic risk, this is okay. But compliance risk is dealing with government bodies. Okay. For example, let's talk about GDPR. I'm not sure how many of you know about GDPR. In simple, if somebody doesn't know, let me answer this. In simple, if there is any organization working in UK or European region, and if you are working with the Europe citizens, UK citizens, if you are collecting the UK citizens data, you have to store that information within the UK boundary itself. You cannot store that information in America or Africa or in India or Singapore. That information has to be within the physical boundary of the UK, Europe Union. Okay. Recently, there was a news wherein Europe Union (EU) has fined almost $500 million to Facebook because it is violating this particular controls, okay, this particular laws. So if you are working in an organization, and if the organization always have to respect the law of land. If the country says you cannot take this data anywhere, or you cannot launch a product because you are violating certain, you have to launch a product only by complying with certain laws of the land. And if you don't respect the laws of land, there'll be a huge penalty from the government. It's leave the penalty. It's not just having a penalty, but you might be, let's say, banned to do business in the country, or you might be banned to launch a product, or you might be banned, or you might be fined a huge penalty from the government, and that's going to give a bad image in the market. See, at the end of the day, whether it is a financial risk or operational risk, strategy risk or compliance risk, company is going to have a bad image because you didn't implement proper controls, and you had a huge financial loss. You didn't implement proper security controls, and you could not have proper operations implemented. Okay, you did not implement proper security controls, because of which you have to completely change your strategy from one way to other way. Okay, and you did not implement proper security controls, and government has fined a huge penalty on you, or maybe they have cancelled your license to do business in the country. Okay, all this will give a bad reputation to organizations. Okay, so that is the reason it is always important to ensure your risks are properly monitored. Okay, okay, now let me see if there are any questions. Okay, in an organization, where information and data are managed, how can you avoid risk and uncertainty? Okay, that's a question. Ali, let me be very clear to you. You cannot avoid risk. Okay, there's always a risk in some or the other form. And see, there is no zero risk concept, or there is no 100% security. You always have a risk associated with you, but impact might change. Maybe the impact is only 10%, 10% loss, or 5% loss, or 1% loss, or maybe 10%, 30% loss, or 40% loss. But there'll definitely be a risk within the organization. Okay. If I answered your question, like I said, for everybody, maybe if somebody is new to the information security, domain and all that, let me be very clear. There is no concept of 100% security. Sorry, who's it? Edubex team. Okay. So there is no 100% security, and there is no zero risk. There's always going to be a risk, and there's always going to be a risk. There's always going to be uh, security, security, uh, uh, security risk for any kind of organizations. Okay. Now let me move on to the statistics. See, I want to give you the statistics before we start discussing about what is a risk and why are we talking about all this risk and what kind of impact it's going to create and all that. Okay, I'm not sure how clearly you can say this. These are the statistics from 2022. Okay, so this is statistics for entire. See, I know that I've started this boot camp with particularly to talk about IT industry, and now I'm showing you multiple industries. I'm showing you education, research. I'm showing you government, healthcare, communications, utilities, and insurance, and all that. The reason why I'm showing you multiple industries is when we are working for an IT organization. Okay, you tend to develop certain softwares, and those softwares will be used by multiple companies in multiple industries. Okay, so when you're selling a product, you're not just selling a product. You're not just giving the product as a service. You also have to ensure the client's data. I mean, client's data or client environment is also not compromised uh, because of your software products. Now, if you look at the below bar graph, um, so over a period of time, one second. So over a period of time, in from see if you see 2022 to, I mean, this is statistics from 2022, and education and research industry has seen 43% increase in the number of attacks from 2021. Okay, so it's a 50% hike than what they've seen last year. And if you see that same education and research, they are seeing 2,314 attacks per organization per week. This is per week number. So 2,341 organizations are being impacted per week. Okay, and government and military, if you see, they have seen a surge of 46% attacks from 2021, and they are seeing 16. So 16, 61 number of attacks are happening per week. Okay. Similarly, healthcare. Healthcare has seen the most number of attacks compared to 2021. It can be based because of COVID, or it can be because of many reasons. So 74% hike in the number of attacks on the healthcare industry, and 1463 attacks per week on an organization. Okay, these are the statistics across the globe. So if you see here, the trend is not decreasing. It's always the percentage of attacks are increasing from the last year. And I'm sure in 2023 also, and we're going to see more and more numbers coming in because every organization is being targeted, and every organization is facing some or the other risk involved. Okay. And let's see a question. Yes. So Mohango, you're right. So we always have to keep certain controls to check the risk. I mean, you always have to balance between business and security. So you always have to plan your security controls accordingly so that your risk is minimum. Okay. Where am I? 1 second. Yeah. So So these are the statistics from 2022, and like I said, the attacks are always increasing, and we always have to ensure proper security controls are in place. Okay, the controls are in place so that the data is not compromised, or the data is not data is not in the wrong hands, or data is available wherever whenever we need it. Okay, so I'm sure everybody know about confidentiality and availability. Okay, so confidentiality is always about securing your information and giving access only to authorized people. Integrity is ensuring the accuracy of the information. Okay, and availability is about ensuring your data is available as and when required. Okay, so that is called CIA. Okay, I'm sure if somebody do not know about it, I'm just touching up this. I don't have the slide for it. So that's not the. I'm sorry. Somebody is drawing certain things. Is that a question? Okay. Okay. Now, let's talk about some basics. Okay. What is vulnerability? What is threat? What is risk? And what is risk treatment? I think we already covered risk, likelihood of negative impact. Okay. So let's talk about vulnerability. Okay. So vulnerability is a weakness in the system. Okay, let me take an example. Let me take an example and tell you what exactly is a vulnerability. So, I've been telling about information as an asset, and information is very critical and all that, right? So let me take an example, on our day-to-day lifestyle itself. See, in our homes, we definitely have some cash, and we definitely have some gold, or diamonds, or any critical documents, property documents, and all that, right? All these are assets for us. Cash is an asset, money is an asset, diamonds are an asset, gold is an asset, and property documents are asset. Okay, so when we go out for a vacation, if the entire family is going out for a vacation, what we do is we keep all these critical things in the locker, and we lock the locker, and then we lock the bedroom door, and then we lock the main door, and then we lock the compound wall gate as well. Okay, so these are the certain controls we implement to ensure our critical assets like gold, diamonds, cash, or property documents are safe and secure. Okay. The funda is very simple. Okay. Why do we need to lock these many doors? Why not we just lock the compound wall gate and just leave it like that? See, the problem here is uh, if we have only one control in place, that control might not be sufficient, because you might have threats coming up from multi. See, even if somebody can easily jump over the compound wall, even if the gate is locked. So that is called weakness. Though you have locked your compound wall gate, there's always a possibility that somebody can easily cross the compound wall because it is of a very low height. Okay, so you have a control in place, but still that control is very weak, and anybody can easily exploit it. So that is called weakness. Am I clear? Okay, so the vulnerability is a weakness in the system, whether the control is implemented or whether the control is not implemented. Okay. Now, second thing is, so weakness is anybody can jump over the compound wall. Now, threat is who is jumping. Okay, is it your family member, or is it a thief, or is it a dog? I mean, sometimes not everybody not is just not just human beings, right? Let's assume you
Sao anh
have
kêu là mình cái video?
hello. I think Edubex team. I think you have to mute. Yeah, sorry. Sorry about that. So sometimes it's not always about human beings, right? Let's assume you have good vegetables planted, you have flowers planted in your compound wall, and you start some animals start jumping over your compound wall and start making mess within your garden, start eating your vegetables, everything, and they enter your house, they completely mess up your house and all that, right? So threat is anything. It can pose a harm to you, it will not pose a harm to you, or it might it might just disturb your operations, it might steal your data, it can be anything. But threat is definitely a factor wherein it's gonna take advantage of your weakness. Since your compound wall is at a very low height, it was easy for anybody to jump. So somebody is taking an advantage of the low height compound wall to jump into the compound and then start moving around. They see they might not do anything, they might just roam around and leave. But because there is a weakness, they are taking advantage of it. So those kind of activities are called threats. For example, for example, when you are given a laptop or when you procure a laptop, um, when you procure a laptop, you have admin rights, you have a USB access, you have webcam access, you can install any software. You don't have an antivirus because that's a fresh laptop, it's a new laptop, antivirus is not installed yet. So you have a laptop, and now the threat is the vulnerability is you don't have antivirus, your USB is not blocked, and you have admin rights. So that's a vulnerability. Now, threat is, let's assume you have, so your friend has given you a pen drive. He copied some data, and you want to copy the data within your laptop. You connected the pen drive, and there is some malware in it. And that malware is taking the advantage of moving into your laptop because you have USB access. So here the threat is malware attack using pen drive. Okay. And the vulnerability is you have USB access, allowing USBs connecting to the laptop. And the threat is because you allowed a pen drive to be connected, the malware is copied into your machine, and it's going to compromise your machine. So that is called threat. Okay. Now, risk is simple. I told you about likelihood of likelihood of a threat exploiting vulnerability. This is a similar case. Malware attack is a threat. Vulnerability is you have USB access. Okay. So now the question is, in a day, how many times you gonna connect a pen drive? I mean, you can always connect your pen drive, which is free from all the viruses. But how many times you gonna connect your friend's pen drive or some random pen drive to copy information? Is it once in a month? Is it once in a week? Or is it once in a year or once in 6 months? So that defines the likelihood or a probability of your machine getting compromised with the malware attack, because there is a possibility that you connect some external pen drive once in a month. Okay. So that is called risk is always about the probability. It will never tell you for sure you're going to get compromised, but it will tell you there is a possibility. Since you have pen drive access, there is a possibility that your machine can be compromised, let's say once in 6 months, or once in a year, or once in a month, because once in a month you connect a third party pen drive to your laptop. Okay. Now, risk treatment. Let me cover this in the next slide. The thing is, it's very simple. Um, let me take the same example of locking your gold and diamond jewelry in a locker, and then you lock the locker, you lock the bedroom door, you lock the main door, and you lock the compound wall gate, right? So now you know that compound wall is of low height, okay, and you also, that's a vulnerability, and you also know that your main door lock, the lock that you are using for the main door is a very small lock, and anybody can easily break it with a stone. Okay, so that's another vulnerability. And the third vulnerability is, um, okay, third vulnerability can be you locked all the doors, but a window is broken. The backside window is broken, and anybody can easily enter into the house using that window. Though all your doors are open, and still people can enter it. Still, a robber, I mean, any thief can enter into house using a window. So the vulnerabilities, okay, and for sure, a thief can use all these vulnerabilities to steal your gold and jewelry. Okay, so now what are you gonna act? What is your response to these vulnerabilities? Do you have enough money to increase the height of the compound wall? Okay, so if you, I mean, so, and do you have enough money, or is it possible for you to go and change the main door lock to a bigger one? Okay, can you include biometric? Can you include multi-factor authentication? Can you include, let's say, can you consider two locks, not just one lock, two locks? Okay, so and a window is broken, and now how do you respond to it? Can you have enough money to change the window, or do you can you, so you don't have to change the window, but can you at least change the glass of the window so that thief will not be in a position to use break the glass and or use the broken window and enter into house? Or do you have enough money to fix a iron grill? Okay, so all these are called risk treatments. Okay, you know what is a risk, you know what is a vulnerability, you know what is the probability of a threat compromising the vulnerability, and accordingly you tend to take necessary actions. Okay, that is called risk treatment. Okay, um, now let me see if um, how to let me see if I see any questions to me. If you can you can post in the chat. I can take this time to answer. Any questions? Okay. So can you differentiate threat and vulnerability again? Okay. I'll definitely do that. Any more questions? See, this is little tricky, threat and vulnerability, and that's the reason I've give day-to-day examples. Any other questions apart from what is asked by uh, threat and vulnerability? There's one on one of the league also. Okay. So, Shamsuddin Adamu, I think you're asking about you already have a data leakage outside, and how do we ensure this will not happen next time? Okay, that's a very tricky question, but I'll definitely answer that. Okay, let me start with at vulnerability and threat. Again, simple. See, whenever you look at the organization, okay, um, mm, whenever we look at the organization, we always have to look at multiple perspectives. Okay. So when I say multiple perspective, see, information security is one field which is going to cover the entire organization. For example, application team, their focus is only application development team. Network team, their focus is only network. Servers team, their focus is only servers. Desktop team, their focus is only desktop. HR team, their focus is only HR. But information security is one team wherein the focus is end to end. It can be hardware, it can be software, it can be emails, it can be data, it can be vendors, it can be HR team, it can be HR data, it can be any data. Okay, we need to ensure the proper controls are in place at each and every department, with each and every resource, with each and every information, source of information. I would say source of information. Okay, so when we talk about vulnerabilities, we are trying to understand the weakness within the system. Simple answer. When you say vulnerability, the vulnerability is nothing but a weakness. It can be anything. Okay, you might not know this is a weakness, but that's the reason you always have to be updated with the latest trends in the market, what is happening in the market with respect to information security, what kind of attacks are happening, what kind of compromise is happening, who are hackers targeting, what kind of new malware coming in. So you always have to understand what's happening outside. Then you need to consider whether that particular attack can happen within your organization, because you have certain controls in place. For example, I'm sure most of your organizations have sales team, right? So sales team, since the sales team have to be in the market, they need to meet multiple people, they need to share multiple data to external parties and all that. Most of the sales team are given USB access. Okay, so giving USB access is a weakness. Why it is a weakness? Because using the USB access, anybody can, if you have a USB access, anybody can connect a pen drive and anybody can transfer data. Okay, the data can be transferred from laptop to outside or outside to laptop. Okay, so the vulnerability is a person is having USB access, so that is weakness. Okay, and the threat is there can be multiple threats with one vulnerability. Let me be very clear. It's not always one vulnerability with one threat. There can be multiple threats for one vulnerability. Now, USB access is a weakness. Now, what is a threat? Threat is somebody can, I can insert any pen drive, and that pen drive has a malware, and that malware is within my system. There is a malware attack on my machine. So that is a threat. The threat here is malware attack. Okay. Second scenario, I've I'm very much pissed off my boss. Okay. Or I'm not happy because my organization is not giving me a good hike or good promotion, and they've given the promotion to some other person. So you're very unhappy with the organization and you want to take the data out. You want to leak certain data, or you want to copy the data and take this with you to a new organization because you're changing your job. Okay, so because the person has USB access, there's always a possibility that he can transfer the data outside to a personal pen drive. So that is a threat here is a data loss using USB access. Okay, so vulnerability can have multiple threats. Okay, third example, the same USB access. Okay, I've connected my pen drive. The pen drive has a malware, and the malware is in my machine. Okay, now I am going to my office today and I connect my laptop to the office network. The moment I connect to the office network, that malware is spreading across the organization. Okay, So the organization is having a malware attack because of one laptop connecting to network which has malwares. Okay. Okay. So okay, I see many questions. So I think now people are clear what is vulnerability, what is threat. Okay, I see one more question. Once again, attacks on data are mostly through browsers. How do we tackle such threat? Okay, so okay, good question. So I was giving you examples purely from USB access because it's easy for people to understand. But like I said, we always have to look at threats and vulnerabilities from network level, cloud level, server level, endpoint level, user level, and all that, right? So let's consider endpoint and let's talk about browsers. Okay, somebody was asking about Ibrahim. You asked you have a doubt about browsers, so let me give you a proper example. So the vulnerability with respect to browsers is not, I'll not say browsers, but about giving full internet access. Let's assume employees have full internet access. So if employees have full internet access, they can access any browser, any website, they can log into any website and they can download any kind of data. The problem here is in most of the websites, I mean, which are good websites, you consider any of the reputed websites, anything like that, you do not have any problem. But by mistake, you downloaded some software. Let's assume you're working on a PPT and you want to convert you have a PDF file and you want to convert that PDF file into Excel sheet, or you want to convert that PDF file into Word document. And since you don't have a proper software, you browse, you go to a different URLs and you start downloading various softwares. If you start downloading various softwares, you never know whether that particular software has a virus or not, or you'd have no idea whether that is a genuine software or it is a malware, or you have no idea whether that particular software is gonna convert that PDF file to Word document and also send that copy to its hacker. Okay, it's sending the same document to a command center or a hacker, and all that, right? So this is a main threat with respect to having full internet access, since people doesn't know what is being downloaded in the backend, and it's going to compromise the whole network. So that is the reason it is not advisable to give full access to internet. Okay, am I clear? Yeah. Attacks on people. Okay, I mean, detecting malwares is very easy, Adamu. Okay, I mean, if you want to block a malware, you can use Windows Defender, you can use semantic antivirus, or you can use um, CrowdStrike. I mean, if you're working for an organization, CrowdStrike is a good tool to safeguard the organization, or you can use Sentinel. You can There are multiple softwares to detect malwares. Okay, it all depends on whether what kind of budgets you have. At the end of the day, it's all about budgets. Okay, what kind of budget you have. Okay, so let me move on, and if there are any questions, I'll definitely answer those questions in the last 10 minutes. I think we have only 40 minutes left. Okay, so I was telling about risk response, right? So, you have a vulnerability, you have a threat, you have multiple threats for the same vulnerability, and you definitely know what is the probability of the risk, what is the probability of threat being okay. So you definitely know what is, sorry, I keeps getting changed. I'm sorry. Yeah. So you definitely know what kind of risk you have, and now you need to start looking at a risk response. Okay, for example, I was talking about the same USB access, right? So you having USB access is a vulnerability. Now, what is your risk response? Do you want to mitigate it? Do you want to avoid it? Do you want to transfer it? Or do you want to accept it? So there are only four risk response. If somebody is preparing for, to get into information security domain, or if you are appearing for interviews, or you want to, if there are any questions about risk response, be very clear. There are only four risk response. You either mitigate risk, or you avoid risk, you transfer risk, or you accept risk. These are the only four things. Okay. So, what is risk mitigation? Now, talking about the same USB access. Okay. The thing is, yeah, you let's assume there are 1,000 people in the organization, and you want to salespeople definitely want USB access. Okay. Now, what you do is, so you cannot avoid the risk because that is their business justification. They are the salespeople in the market. They need to go outside and start sharing the documents to your customers, or to your distributors, or to your any person, anybody. Okay, they definitely need USB access because they need to give presentations. They need to make more revenue, more they bring more business and all. So you can definitely not avoid it. Salespeople definitely need USB access. Now, how do you mitigate the risk? How do you ensure how do you ensure there are no malwares compromising the USB access? Or how do you ensure the person is not transferring the data outside the organization? So you need to start implementing controls to monitor if there are any malwares entering that particular laptop. So one of the best control is, and the moment a pen drive is connected, ensure before the data transfer itself, ensure the USB is properly scanned by anti-malware solution. Okay, that is a mitigation control. Second thing is, you install a software called DLP, data leakage prevention, or data loss prevention, wherein if somebody is trying to transfer any files, the security team will get an alert. Okay. I mean, these are all the controls that you need to implement to mitigate the risk. See, I'm talking about mitigating a risk because at the end of the day, if there is a malware attack, you want to avoid, you don't want to avoid giving USB access, but you want to reduce the impact of malware attacks. So that is called mitigation. Okay, so you start implementing controls to mitigate. So third one is, if they are coming back to office before they connect the network, we ensure that the complete laptop is properly scanned so that there are no malware attacks. There are no malwares present in the laptop, and before they connect to a network, the entire laptop is properly scanned, and then it is allowed to connect to network if there are no malwares present. So these are all called mitigative techniques. So you're trying to reduce the impact, but you're still giving USB access. Okay. So second one is risk avoidance. Now, what you want to do is the same example. Salespeople need USB access, but you definitely know there is an impact because they definitely want to share documents. They'll be sharing the documents. They'll be connecting pen drives. You never know how they're going to use it. Let's assume you have 10,000 salespeople, and your entire organization is only 50,000 people, and out of which one-fifth of the people have USB access, which is impossible for you to handle that kind of risk, because 10,000 people getting compromised, or 10,000 monitoring 10,000 people activities, monitoring their activities, taking action on them, reaching out to them and asking them to update the antivirus, asking them not to connect to network. So all these are a little hectic, right? So what you do is you take an action saying block USB access for everybody. So you are avoiding a risk. Even if you 10,000 people, you are blocking the USB access so that the risk is completely avoided. So then you start coming up with alternative techniques. What if salespeople wants to share documents? Then you start giving them SharePoint access or OneDrive access, or maybe you ask salespeople to send the documents through emails only. So all these are the alternative techniques because you want to avoid a risk. So the avoiding risk is by blocking USB access, you are avoiding malware attacks, you are avoiding data leakage, you are avoiding the malware spreading across the organization. Okay. So risk mitigation and risk avoidance are a little different. Risk mitigation is you want to live with the risk, but you want to reduce the impact. Okay, you are the risk means you're trying to live with the USB access, but you're coming up with multiple controls to reduce the impact. That is called risk mitigation. Risk avoidance is you don't want to take the headache of implementing multiple controls and all that. You are trying to avoid the complete risk by by avoiding the weakness or vulnerability in the system. So weakness is USB access. With USB access, you have multiple threats, and you are avoiding the complete vulnerability. You're avoiding the complete risk, so that you don't have to worry about all the impact and all that. Now, third one is risk transfer. So risk transfer is very simple. Okay, and the best answer for risk transfer in any department or in any industry is insurance. Okay, insurance is one thing. Is called see you are giving. See, the risk is we can meet with an accident. There can be always some issue or some health condition and all that. And so you are buying insurance. When you buy insurance, if you by any chance if you are hospitalized and you don't have money, the complete expenditure is taken care by insurance vendor. Okay, so you are transferring the risk to some other person to take care of it. So that is called risk transfer, and the best example anytime is insurance. Okay, fourth one is risk acceptance. So let's assume people have USB access. We have implemented DLP, data loss prevention. We have implemented malwares, anti-malware solution. We have ensured they do not connect to our network, and they connect to network only when the complete laptop is scanned. So we have taken all the controls. Still, you feel there is 1% chance that a laptop can be compromised. See, we never know, right? Like I said, there's no 100% risk. I mean, there's no 100% security. So there's that 1% the probability that the laptop can still be compromised with the malware. So you still have to accept it. So that is called risk acceptance. You have to live with it. So you have taken all the controls with respect to blocking administrative access, blocking, installing anti-malware solution, installing DLP and all that. And you still feel that there can be that 1% of laptop. Let's say if you have 10,000 laptops with salespeople, maybe there is one laptop which is not properly having antivirus installed, and because of which there is a malware attack on that particular laptop. So that is something we definitely have to live with it, and we consider that as risk acceptance. So there's no other alternate way. We have done our best, and if there is any still a gap in the system, that is that we still have to accept it. Okay, so these are all called risk response strategies. Um, okay, so I don't see any question, so let me move on. Now, okay, now this is the topic that we want to discuss. I'm sure I've given enough information and enough foundation, enough initial information. So I'm not sure how many of you are professionals or how many of you are students. So I want to always start with the basics so that everybody understands um, the basics. Now, let's come to the IT industry factor, wherein what kind of challenges we have with respect to what IT industry. Why are we talking about IT industry specifically? Why not any other industry? See, like I said, IT industry works on multiple softwares, and I think Michael, this is already being recorded. I think we can get the recording after this. Just give me a minute. Let me have some water, and then we can start. Just 1 minute. Yeah, sorry. So, see, an IT industry is one industry which is different from manufacturing industry or a sales team or you know sales, retails, manufacturing, automobile industry, healthcare. So, IT industry is all about digital data. Okay, since it is all about digital, and the softwares that we produce are used by different organizations in different industries. Okay, there. See, for example, Zoom software that is developed by Zoom organization is used by any industry. It can be used by uh, the automobile industry, it can be used by education industry, it can be used in healthcare, it can be used in education, it can be used in anywhere, right? So the products that we develop is spread across is used by multiple organizations, and we never know what kind of impacts our softwares can pose to those organizations. Okay, and what kind of security challenges we have in IT industry? First one is remote work. I mean, most people know work from home culture from COVID era, but IT industry is one industry has a work from home culture before COVID also. Before COVID also, people used to work from home. They have a feasibility to work from anywhere. Everything can be done through their laptops at home, and I'm not sure if people know about this bring your own device concept, wherein IT industry is one thing that allows people to bring I mean, they can use any kind of laptop to work on developing applications. Okay, so I'm sorry, remote work is one major challenge within the organizations, especially in IT industry. Second one is cloud storage. Since IT applications involves a lot of data storage and everything is involved, data is involved, so people tend to go for cloud as an option because it is easy to set up and it is fast to set up, and they have multiple functionalities involved to automate certain things. So people always tend to go towards cloud. The problem is, so there's nothing wrong with going cloud, but it's always a problem of what kind of controls you implemented before you start using cloud. So that is where people tend to um, uh, okay, so that is where the problem is. So when you have a cloud storage or a cloud usage involved, you always have to start protecting the cloud also. But it's not just data; it's always about protecting the cloud as well. So that these days cloud storage is posing a lot of issues because people doesn't understand exactly how to configure or how to protect their cloud environments. Third one is software vulnerabilities. Okay. I mean, when we work on multiple things, say, for example, on day-to-day basis, we have We use MS Word, we use PowerPoint, we use Adobe, we use, for example, if you want to develop any softwares and all, we use Apache, we use IS servers, we use multiple servers, multiple softwares to use them to develop applications, right? So every software will have some or the other vulnerability. Since we use multiple softwares, for example, let's assume database server, SQL database server. Maybe when we start let's assume we are working on a product which is going to take 3 years to develop. And when we started working on it, maybe SQL database server is 10 version. And by the time we started, by the time the 3 years are completed and we want to roll out, we have not considered testing our application on the latest SQL database. Maybe as the latest SQL database is SQL 12 or 13. We were working on SQL 10 3 years back, and we still want to check whether that particular software will work only on 10, but we have not tested whether it is working on SQL version 13. So these are all the weaknesses that we need to understand on the softwares behind the application development. Okay, so that is the major challenge. Endpoint vulnerabilities. We were talking about endpoint vulnerabilities from last 10 minutes, 20 minutes. So people can be using their endpoint can be anything. It can be a server, it can be a laptop, it can be a smartphone, it can be even your mobile laptop or iPad, anything, whichever is being used to connect to network, whichever is being used to work on the applications. So all these are are endpoints, and there is always some or the other vulnerability associated with endpoints. Say fifth one is network vulnerabilities. See, when I say network vulnerability, I'm not just talking about the organization. See, I was talking about cloud because we are storing data in cloud. Similarly, some organizations are still using data centers on in the organizations, and there can be some or the other vulnerability with respect to the network behind the data center or network behind the organization. And those vulnerabilities are also very critical, because if a network is compromised, the data center is compromised. If the data center is compromised, then your data is compromised. Okay, so that is the reason even network vulnerabilities also pose a major challenge with respect to securing our information. The last one is the application vulnerability. Application is the product from IT industry. Any IT industry, I mean, not most of the IT organizations have multiple products, right? Multiple applications as products, and those products can be exposed to internet. Those can be within the organization. Those can be deployed on mobile phone. Those can be deployed on deployed as web applications. Those can be integrated to third parties. Those can be integrated to, let's say, it can be in it can be in hybrid deployment. It can be some part in cloud, some part in data center. So application architecture can be anything. But at the end of the day, are you in a good position to secure your data within the application? So that is very important. And you always see, hackers are improvising on day-to-day basis. If hackers are improvising on day-to-day basis, we also have to improvise ourselves to ensure our data is not compromised, because we did not improve our security controls. It's always about improvements. So you cannot say today I implemented a security control and this control is applicable for next 2 years. You can never know. Maybe you implemented a control today and tomorrow it can be irrelevant because there's some other gap and this control is irrelevant. So you always have to completely supervise your controls on a regular basis and ensure the data is not being compromised because hacker is not exploiting them. Okay. So now let's talk purely from applications. See, applications is the bread and butter of IT industry. Okay. Most of the IT companies, either they support their clients through applications, or they sell. I mean, they develop a product and they start selling to third parties. I mean, to the vendors or to their clients, so that they make revenue out of it. And or maybe they release this product as a freeware to all the citizens across the globe, or they use this application to make money by giving entertainment. See, YouTube is entertainment. YouTube is an application, but it's an entertainment tool. Instagram, it's a photo sharing tool. Okay, so all these applications have multiple objectives with multiple business revenue models. At the end of the day, every application is supposed to generate certain kind of revenue. Okay, so now what are the challenges in securing the application? Why do we need so much money? Why do we need so many? Why are see even after knowing security is important, even after we knowing data is important, even after we knowing if the data is leaked, it's going to create a lot of business impact organization. Why do we still see multiple attacks happening across the globe? The problem is there's too much of complication involved with respect to securing applications. For example, the major challenge. Let me talk about the major challenge: lack of resources. When I say lack of resources, the resource can be people, the resource can be technical controls, the resource can be basic awareness. Maybe people are not in a position to understand anything, or it can be multiple things. Now, when we say lack of resources, uh, one thing is, let me give you some basic understanding of it. In most of the organizations, the team that develops the application, they'll be in multiple numbers. I mean, there can be 100 people, there can be 1,000 people. I've seen 10,000 people working on one application. Okay, because it is so big application, 10,000 people are working on it. Now, out of those 10,000 people, most of the people are very good with respect to their development knowledge. They know how to code a product. They know how to write a source piece of code. They know what the components are required to integrate for that particular application. But the problem is they lack security knowledge. They think security is simple, but they have no idea how to implement security controls. They don't even know what kind of controls to implement. And because of that reason, they tend to create a lot of weakness within the code, which results in compromising the application very easily. Okay, and so that is an awareness issue from the people who are developing the code. Second one is, when you are developing a code, or when you are developing an application, over a period of time, there will be always some budget issues, or maybe the business is not good, or they don't have enough money. They did not anticipate much. They anticipated much revenue, but they did not meet the targets, so they didn't have budgets to implement security controls. Okay, so because they don't have budget to implement security controls, it's easy for hackers to compromise the application. Okay, and third one is, maybe the security is not considered in the starting itself. So see, security should always be in the design phase. You cannot implement security in the last. When you are developing the application, you always have to consider security in the design phase. Okay. So since you did not consider, since people are not aware of security, or you did not give priority to security, and because of budget issues, you did not hire good people from security, and or people are not aware of security, that was a major challenge in securing the applications. Second one is the complexity. When I say complexity, I was telling about 10,000 people working on an application, right? So some applications are very easy. You just open the browser and you access the application, you give your username and password, and then you start sharing your pics. Simple product, no complication involved. But let's understand SAP. I'm not sure how many of you know about SAP. SAP is a very complicated tool. Okay, and since it integrates with every department in an organization, and it has to store all the details in the each and every department, and there's a lot of amount involved, there's a lot of data involved, there's a lot of complication involved. So SAP is a very complicated tool. Since it is a very complicated tool, sometimes you tend to miss implementing security controls at the various levels or various departments or at various domains, which is a major challenge with respect to securing application. Third one is third party components. When I say third party components, see, these days every application has to share information outside. So, for example, if you have 10 applications, 10 different applications within the organization, they all have to be connected. For example, HR team, let's assume they have Power BI tool, and they also have payroll system. They also have HR system. They also have attendance system. They also have, let's assume, leave attendance system, and they also have leave tracking system, and they also store the complete HR employees data in a separate database. And they also have to take care of insurance. They also have to take care of multiple things, right? So each and every activity is a different application. HR application is different, payroll application is different, and insurance application is different, and attendance application is different. But at the end of the day, all these applications have to talk to each other. So you are integrating some other application to your application, and you have no idea whether that particular application is properly secured or not. Okay, but still you need to integrate it because that's a requirement from the organization, and you are integrating your tool with the other tool. So when you're integrating two tools, even if one other tool is compromised, this tool also gets compromised because you have a third party component integrated. So these are various challenges, major challenges with respect to securing your application. Sometimes it's not from your application, but because of some other application you are getting compromised, which is quite common. But still, you still have to imagine that imagine that kind of scenarios before you even develop your application. Okay, and the problem is, if an application is compromised, that particular application, and whichever application is being used within an organization, there's always a business oriented, it's always business oriented. Even if you are using HR system or payroll system, you might think they are not they're not related to business, but if a payroll is getting delayed by even by 1 day or 2 day, people don't work in the organization, and that's going to create a lot of operational risks because employees are not working. There is no revenue being generated because employees are not working because the payroll system is down and the pay slips amount is, I mean, salaries are not created. That's going to create a lot of issue even in the operation side. So that's create operational risk. And the multiple things. For example, people might say it's a payroll system, but what if the payroll data is leaked in the third party leaked by hacker has compromised the third party payroll system, and they started publishing all the data in a website, and people start comparing, people start talking about the organization. They may talk about why the company is paying so less salaries to people, or they might say the company is not paying good salaries to women employees. They're not treating women employees properly. There's so much of partiality. So people talk about organization, right? Because the data has gone out. But leadership might think it's just a payroll system, but it's going to create a lot of damage to the organization. So any application, if compromised, is going to create a lot of impact. Okay, so now how do we reduce the risk in the software applications? This is purely from software application, not from any other thing. So when we talk about software applications, it can be anything. It can be your Microsoft Word, it can be your ERP software, it can be your, it can be your HR payroll, it can be any softwares that we use within the organization. How do we reduce the risk? First of all, before we use a technique called threat modeling. Okay, so this helps us to understand the complete in-depth functionality of software that we use in the organization, and then understand what kind of risk we have, then what kind of controls we need to implement. First is define the scope. Understand what are all the software applications that you want to implement or you want to assess within the organization. Define the scope, and then define the assets that are understand the assets that are being used by that application. Understand people, who are the people using that particular application. So you need to start looking at the scope, and then you start looking at who are all the stakeholders involved in within that particular scope. I might say it's a payroll system, but the payroll system is being used by HRD. The payroll system is being used by the employees to download their payslips. Payroll system is being used by third party to start making payslips. Payroll system is integrated to finance team, because they, at the end of the day, they have to release the budgets and all that for releasing salaries. So you need to start looking at who are the stakeholders involved in using that particular application. Second thing is the critical infrastructure. What is the infrastructure behind that particular application? Okay, whether the people, whether it is deployed on the data center, whether it is deployed on the cloud, whether it is the application is deployed in the third party data center, or application is deployed by some other vendor and we are taking that as a service. So you need to start looking at the defining the scope, and then create a data flow diagram. See, at the end of the day, I kept on saying it's always about securing your data. Okay, so let's start looking at how the data is flowing from one person to other person, or one module to other module, and one entity to other entity. So let's start. Also, we have to start creating the data flow diagram to understand how the data is flowing from one component to other component. So once we know how the data is flowing, then we can start looking at identifying the threats. See, it's always about understanding where the data can be compromised. If we know where the data is being compromised, then we will know how it is being compromised. Okay, so we'll start looking at identifying threats. We'll start looking at, possible the impact. Then we're gonna start looking at assessing risk. If we know the threat, then we'll start looking at what is the probability. Can it happen immediately? Can it happen every day? Can it happen once in a month? Can it happen once in 6 months? Is it 90% sure? Is it 80% sure? Is it 70% sure? And then we start looking at the impact. Is the impact severe? Is the impact medium? Is the impact low? If we know the impact, if we know the probability of a risk, then we start looking at defining the risk response. Can we mitigate? Can we implement certain controls to mitigate the risk? Can we avoid the risk? Can we accept the risk? Can we transfer the risk? So we'll have to start looking at various risk response using when we have identified the risk. So this is a threat modeling purely for software applications. Okay. Any questions, please ping me. Take another 5 minutes, and then we are good to go for question and answers. Okay. So threat modeling is mainly used for software applications, and the key factor is defining the scope and creating the data flow diagrams. If you don't know where your data is, you never know what kind of threats it has. Okay, so always think about data flow. I mean, data flow diagram can be used by software applications, or you can also use this in multiple ways for other requirement. But in software applications, it's always about data flow, from where the data is coming and where it is, data in use, data at rest, data in motion, right? So it's always about data. Now, the last important cybersecurity framework with respect to risk is identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. I'm not sure how many of you have seen this previously, but if you have not seen this, I'm sorry, if you have not seen this, this is a very famous NIST cybersecurity framework with respect to handling risk. Okay, you always have to start looking at identifying, protect, detect, respond, recover. So the first thing is identify your assets. What are your assets? Okay, what are, it can be hardware, it can be software, it can be data, it can be people also. People are also your assets. So there can be multiple things with respect to identifying the assets. So once you identify the assets, then you start looking at protecting those assets. How do you protect the assets? It can be multiple controls. It can be control at network level. It can be control at endpoint level. It can be control at user level. It can be control at data level. It can be controlled by using your leadership support also. Okay, when you start implementing controls, you always have to start looking at detecting the risks. Okay, if you don't detect the risk, you can't respond to risk. You always should be in a position to see. There's always this saying. I'm not sure how many of you heard about this. If you There's no 100% security is what I've been saying from last 2 hours. At the same time, if you don't have a security incident, it doesn't mean that your organization is very good with respect to um, security controls implementation. If you don't have a security incident, it means that you're not properly monitoring the security controls. There will be a security incident all the time. If you don't detect it, it means that your detection is bad. Okay, let me be very clear. If somebody is giving you a good green dashboard saying that in the last 3 months we don't have any security incidents, you can just take that report and dump it. If you are not seeing incident, it means that you don't have proper detection controls. So ensure you have proper detection controls um, for all the for the entire organization at various levels. It can be at network level, it can be at endpoint, user, data, and application. Always have detection controls implemented so that you keep monitoring the systems, you keep monitoring the alerts, you keep monitoring the threats. When you know the alerts, when you know what threat is happening, then you tend to respond to it. For example, if you know that there is a malware attack happening, you tend to respond to the malware attack by certain actions. It can be multiple things. You will remove the machine from the network. You will deploy antivirus solution. You will ensure this virus is not spreading across other machines, and then you sandbox it. You tend to understand. You'll try to quarantine the malware. So you do multiple things as part of responding to threat. So those are called response. I mean, you have to start responding to a risk by implementing certain controls so that the impact is mitigated. See, at the end of the day, if a malware strike is on one laptop, the impact is low. But if the attack is happening on 20 or 100 laptops, then the impact is high. So you need to take multiple controls to mitigate the attack, mitigate the impact to as much as possible, and then recover. If there is a malware attack, which can definitely happen, how did you recover? Did you quarantine the virus? Did you isolate the machine from the network? Or did you, if the malware is sending data from your laptop to the command center of a hacker, have you created multiple firewall rules so that this laptop is not sending any data? Have you implemented, have you started looking at backing? Did you check the backup data in case if you want to reformat the machine? Do you have proper data backup controls in place so that you can recover the data from the backup? So all these are recovery techniques. Okay, so identify, protect, detect, respond, recover is applicable as part of managing your risk for any kind of organization, not just from IT. But when we talk about identifying the software application risk, we always talk about threat modeling. What kind of threats you have, how the data is flowing, and what kind of controls you have implemented. Okay. So this is what I wanted to cover for this bootcamp. It's always about risk management. Of course, in IT, it's a little different because the focus is just not just on your applications, but the focus is also on securing the applications that you are developing, so that when those applications are being used by other organizations, because of our lack of understanding of security, our client should not be compromised because they are using our softwares. Okay. Okay. So let me just give me a minute. How do I make a host? Yeah.
Yeah.
I've given this. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Rohit. So now the session is open for the question answers. So if you have any questions, you can ask either in the chat box, or if you have any questions, you can raise your hands. I mean, there is a reaction buttons where you can just put in there. So I'm just putting a link in the chat box. It's a Google form wherein which you can fill in if you want to have a recorded session, or if you want to claim the certificate of participation, because we are actually providing certificate of participation for those who have participated in this boot camp. So if you want to have that certification, I mean certificate of participation, and of course the recorded session, or we do have two courses coming up next week. That is one is for CompTIA Security Plus, for those who have to start your career in cybersecurity. That's a beginner friendly course. And of course, we do have advanced course as well, that is CISSP. So if you have any sort of inquiry related or courses as well, you can just fill in this form so that like our advisors can contact you for any purpose, for the course related queries, for the slides, and for the certificates, or if you want to know more about cybersecurity, also you can go fill in this form so that our team can obviously contact you. Yeah, now the session is open for the question answers. If you have any questions, you can type in the chat box, or you can just raise your hand so that we can unmute you and you can ask directly. Yeah, we have a question from Mr. Joseph. He's asking, like, can we have a risk assessment based scenario? Answer it together. So do you have any other question, Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, sorry. Joseph, do you want me to consider a specific scenario that you have for any risk assessment? See, I've been giving some examples with respect to USB. Okay, USB is always a risk assessment, right? I mean, see, risk assessment is always about understanding the weakness that you have. Okay, and then start framing a threat around it. And once you have a threat involved, okay, what is the business impact? Understanding the business impact, then come up with the risk response. Do you want to mitigate? Do you want to accept? Do you want to avoid? Do you want to transfer? And And over a period of time, you start coming back to it. It's not like you implemented a control now for risk mitigation and you feel like the risk is completely mitigated or there's only 1% probability. But today you implemented some risk mitigation controls. But tomorrow the controls that you implemented may not be relevant. Today it can be only 1% probability. Tomorrow it can come back to 50% probability. So risk assessment has to be reviewed at a regular intervals so that we have a continuous controls implemented to reduce to mitigate the risk. Okay, so example, I mean, it's the same example. You always have to consider uh, the risk, understand the impact, understand the probability, and then understand your risk response and review it at the regular intervals. Okay.
Any more questions? Oh yeah, there is one more thing. It's from Utega. In your opinion, which emerging technologies or trends have the potential to significantly impact IT security in the coming years?
So cloud adoption is booming up thanks to COVID or thanks to multiple reasons. Cloud is always booming up, and since cloud adoption is increasing, we see more and more security risks with respect to cloud security. Okay, cloud security not being properly implemented or cloud adoption is not properly implemented, and we are seeing more and more ransomware attacks on the cloud, which is not the case 2 years back. So yeah, this cloud adoption is a major trend. And second one is AI. AI is coming up. I mean, we know ChatGPT, but we have been using AI in industries from a long time, from last 2 3 years to automate certain things because people are working from home. They're not available in office, so certain tasks have to be automated. So AI was already implemented in organizations, and now when you start looking at integrating other AI technologies, third party AI technologies, we never know how they work because it's AI. At least with applications we know the functionality, but with AI we don't know how it works, and it keeps on learning all the information that we share. So AI can be another, it's not, I would say it's a challenge. You have to keep continuously monitor it, but does it pose a risk? It might, it may not. So it's always about continuous. It's always about teaching kids, first class student, second class student, nursery. It's always about being behind them to so that they don't make any mistakes. Yeah.
Oh, all right. So we have another question from Mr. Nuruddin. For the risk that cannot be 100% avoided, how do we minimize to the lowest rate?
Yeah. So the same example. If you can't avoid it, start implementing various controls. For example, the USB access example that I gave. I give USB access the best example because everybody can easily understand. But if you have a different scenario, maybe I can give you a better answer. If you can't avoid it, then start looking at implementing controls wherein only pen drives provided by the organization, only those pen drives can be connected. Mobile phones cannot be connected to laptop, and you cannot transfer the data during let's assume you cannot transfer the data from only confidential data cannot be transferred, but any other information can be transferred. Or you can transfer the data, but you cannot copy the data from outside to inside. So you'll have to implement multiple controls so that you are mitigating the risk. You're not avoiding it, but you are mitigating it.
Yeah, we have one more question from Mr. Ortega. Are there security measures implemented in the cloud? As I see sometimes some can hack into company accounts.
So cloud security controls have been there from day one of cloud. People are not aware of it. They don't know how to implement it, or because cloud adoption is fast. The reason why people come to cloud is they can easily deploy a resource and then they can start developing their application, and they can go live immediately, because it is faster to adopt. I mean, it is faster to develop applications using cloud, and it is faster to release applications into market. People tend to miss the fact that security is also critical before they implement security controls, before they start looking at releasing the application. So there are no challenges specifically from I mean, if you ask me, the question is, yes, there are security controls in cloud. It's always about what needs to be implemented and where is something people have to be aware of. At least developers will not be aware. We as security professionals, we need to convey that.
Yeah, we have few more questions. Before answering those questions, just let me remind you that I'm sharing the link so that you can just fill in. And the question is that, like, what are some future internet security challenges as every business and other activities are going digital?
Uh, I think there's no there is not future security challenge. Shamsuddin, every application is digital these days. I mean, every application, every organization have their applications internet facing. I mean, if you ask me, there was a time where an SAP application was never internet facing. It's always an internal organization application. Now even SAP is also being exposed to internet, because people are made to work from home, and SAP has to be exposed to internet so that they can access the application to work from home. So everything has gone digital, but it's always important to review the design, review the architecture, and review the design of the architecture of the application, so that the proper security controls are being recommended at the design phase itself, so that if it is implemented properly. So there's nothing like future or present or anything. It's always evolving. Today, you come up with a design phase wherein you wanted developers to implement certain controls because it is being exposed to internet. And after 3 months, you tend to see some applications are getting compromised outside your organization. Then you come back and say, okay, we have more other controls to implement. Then you keep adding more and more controls, so that the application is same. You are just adding more and more controls, so that you are adapting your controls as per the ongoing attacks outside the organization.
Yeah, I hope your questions have been answered. So we have another question from Mr. Olatunji. He's asking, like, how AI can be used to enhance risk management.
Okay, I would say we can leverage AI with respect to risk response. So we have risk mitigation, risk acceptance, risk transfer, and risk avoidance, right? When it comes to risk mitigation, we want a faster response. Sometimes we have come across malware attacks which are very fast in nature. I mean, it can spread to 10,000 machines in fraction of minutes, and that is where we need the AI tools to start implementing controls immediately. Maybe isolate the machine from network, or maybe looking for various repositories outside our organization in the research. I'll go through multiple websites to understand what is the mitigation control to be implemented, and then start implementing the mitigation control, even if the employees are not available. See, let's assume it's in the night time, and there was and there's some cyber attack happening, malware attack happening. So even if people are sleeping, the AI should be in a position to start implementing mitigation techniques, so that the malware is mitigated. So that is how AI is used for risk mitigation. It's reactive. It's also proactive. Sometimes patch management is done through AI these days now. So that's a proactive thing. Risk mitigation is reactive. So AI can be used in that way.
Yeah. All right. So we have another question from Shamsuddin again, like, how can we detect the authenticity of the cloud storage so as to avoid being wrongly stored data in a non-authentic site?
Okay, this is more of a legal activity, Shamsuddin, not from security. See, where do you want to store the data? That always should be decided during the application architecture, not from security architecture. Of course, security also have to be involved. Uh, Application, this is more of an application architecture concept. Um, when we design application architectures, okay, the development team should take inputs from multiple people. You have to take inputs from security team, they need to take inputs from legal team, they need to take inputs from privacy team, they need to take inputs from finance team, and also business teams, because at the end of the day each person have their own perspective. Okay, information security might give in inputs related to how the application architecture has to be defined, what should be the primary side, what should be the secondary side, how do we respond to disasters, or how do we store the data, where to store the data. Okay, why, I mean, all those inputs have to be given by the security professionals, because they know the concept and they know the regulations as per the government, they know the regulations as per the industry. So all these are at the design phase itself. Okay.
All right. So we have got another question from Ortega itself. Like, many thanks for the insightful answer. However, with the emergence of AI and Wi-Fi hacking, sure, cloud controls will totally secure this information.
I mean, cloud security controls or data security controls or data center security controls, or even what do you call even endpoint security controls. All the controls. I mean, we have controls from day one. It's always about how effectively they are implemented. See, implementing control is different. How effectively the controls are being implemented is different. See, just imagine the traffic scenario wherein we all know that if it is a red light in the signal, we have to stop. And that is the control that needs to be implemented by all the citizens. But how effectively it is being followed by people is something that policeman has to check. So that is where our job comes in. Information security professionals does policing of how effectively are the controls being implemented, so that this kind of hackings doesn't happen and we don't the information is not stolen by some third parties.
Yeah, so we have one more question from Mr. Orifeo. What are the best application or software that can be used to monitor our network, like servers, firewalls, cloud, and database on user movement across the network?
Best applications of the used to monitor. Okay, if you're talking about monitoring all these devices, the best solution. I mean, I'll not name a product. These tools are called SIM. Okay, SIEM. Okay, and IBM Curator is one good tool. Sentinel is a good tool. So all these are the tools. They tend to monitor all the activities that are happening across all the critical infrastructure. They Unity integrate all this critical infrastructure to SIEM tools, so that they keep monitoring what kind of activities are happening, and if there is any abnormal activity, they trigger an alert. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one last question from Mr. Ortega. You mentioned the importance of continuous monitoring for cloud security. Could you outline key metrics or indicators that organizations should monitor to ensure their cloud environment remains secure, or can this be AI based?
Importance of cloud security. Okay, so when we talk about metrics, Ortega, it's not just see the metrics, whether it is on-prem or whether it is a cloud, the metrics remain the same. For example, in the data center, we will there is a metric. I'll not say metric. We can definitely say a database should not be exposed to internet. So that is a control that we have been following from day one of our lives as part of data center. Now, with cloud coming to picture, the database is being replaced by AWS S3, or in the case of Azure, it is being replaced by Azure Blob Storage. So the control has not changed. The control will still remain the same. Any resource which has huge amount of data should never be exposed to internet directly. So whether it is a database server on the data center, or whether it is AWS S3 or Azure Blob Storage, We should never expose those to internet directly. So the metric is how many database servers can be accessed directly from internet. So that can be your key metric. So the metrics, whether it is your on-prem or cloud, remains the same. It's just that some things are automated in cloud, so that gives a flexibility to reduce that monitoring. For example, hardening. I'm not sure how many of you know this, but to you, Ortega, if you are a technical person, um, we do hardening of images on the prem. We do harden the laptops. We do harden the servers, and it's a very time-taking process, but in cloud it is automated. You have this cloud formation technologies like Terraform and all, wherein you can definitely configure what exactly you want to how exactly you want to deploy servers, or how exactly you want to deploy your containers, Docker images. So everything you define infrastructure as a code in the Terraform images, and that's how you deploy it. So some metrics you don't have to monitor because it is automated, and there will not be any deviation from those security controls. So the metrics remain the same. It's just that some you don't have to monitor because of automation. Some you definitely have to monitor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I hope, Mr. Ortega, your question has been answered. So for those who have joined lately, just to let you know that we have put a Google Form link in the chat where you can just fill in if you want the recorded session. And those who want to know more about the courses, or if you want to have the certificate of participation, you can fill in that Google form. And we have one more question from Mr. Yusuf. What are the major challenges in cloud security?
Yeah, major challenges in cloud security. Let me talk from different levels of organizations. Okay, let me talk about a startup. If there is a startup recently coming up and they're very eager to start showcasing their product, and they're very small, they don't have much funding involved, and so they take a small number of resources from cloud so that it is easy for them to develop, and they tend to come up with the product very quickly, and they want to showcase to the world that their startup concept is a very good product. Okay, so they're in a hurry, but they have less resources, and they don't have enough people from security also, because it is a startup. So there'll be many security mislaps. Okay, they have not deployed the architecture properly, or it is not reviewed by security person, and or maybe they have not implemented security controls for their prototype. So so all that is because of some lack of knowledge or some lack of resources based on the budgets available in the cloud, based on the budget available for the startup. Now, the same scenario for a major organization wherein they have good cloud presence, they have almost 10,000 servers in cloud and all that. Amazon or Flipkart or any other e-commerce sites. Okay, there you need a skilled people, because it's a complicated environment. You need to have proper process in place, proper procedures in place, proper cloud security monitoring tools in place, proper logs monitoring in place. You need to define the architecture properly, and you cannot skip that architecture at any point of time. So you need to have lots of governance involved if yours is a major complicated environment. So the challenges vary from company to company, application to application, and sometimes you might be using third-party websites, SaaS products, and all that. You integrate those SaaS products to your cloud environment. You might be using hybrid cloud. So multiple challenges based on how you have set up your cloud. Okay, I'll take last question, one more question, and then we can wind up this.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can put in chat box, because I think all of the questions have been answered so far. And I just want to remind about the link again. Like, if you want to have any sort of communication with us, you can just fill in the Google form so that we can have a conversation with you. Seems like we don't have any more questions. So with that, we are about to wind up the session. So once again, I would like to Mr. Rohit for the insightful session regarding the topic. And I would like to thank each one of you for your time. And of course, we would like to hear your feedback from you, each one of you, so that like we can come up with more topics and more boot camps and webinars and all. And thank you all. Thank you once again, and have a good evening.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for your patience. I hope I've covered most of your questions and concerns. And thanks for all the time. Thank you.